Hi, Ghosties. I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
And this week we're talking about one of the most documented and long-lasting hauntings in the United States. Something that I'm sure you've heard of, maybe even you've heard of, the Bell Witch.
I have not, actually.
Interesting.
I only heard of it whenever you started talking about it.
Okay.
I don't really know anything. So, wow, my voice sounds rough
A little bit,
now
but
that
it's
we're
okay.
starting to talk. I am a sickly child, and so I apologize. I have been sick how many times this month?
Like on and off
3,
for
2.
the last couple months, yeah.
Yeah, it's been rough.
The story surrounds the Bell family in the early 1800s and its origins, but there are still strange occurrences happening on that land even today. It was the inspiration behind many songs, shows, and movies, including the Blair Witch Project, and has countless books and articles detailing the actions of the so-called witch in Robertson County, Tennessee. Most shockingly, the story contains one of the first, if not the only, death caused by ghost on record.
What?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Do we believe it?
Maybe.
Okay.
Just to get on with it, our tea today is Harney & Sons Japanese Sencha green tea.
I'm excited. It smells good. We brought back the teapot, so let's go. This is healing me.
Good.
It's pretty good. I'm a fan of a green tea, and I like it.
Not too bad.
Nope. I honestly needed this.
Just to get started, there are several books covering the topic of Bell Witch, as I mentioned in the intro. I read 2 of those books for this episode. Well, more so read one, skimmed through the other, because that would have just taken me entirely too long. The first one, An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch, written by newspaper editor Martin Van Ingram. It was published in 1894 and supposedly used one of the Bell children, Richard Williams Bell's journal detailing the events that he and his family endured for several years earlier in his life. It was the first full-length record of the famed events that happened on the farm along the Red River in Tennessee. One thing to note was that the supposed journal has never been released. The only person really actually known to have seen the journal is the author of the book. Maybe there are some people who say that the family didn't want it released out unedited.
Okay.
So they entrusted it to this author to, take out the things that they didn't want and release in the book.
But why? I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. So just take this with what you will. Also, the diary that was supposedly used for this was written several years after the events had occurred.
Okay, so it was just from memory. It wasn't
Yes.
as it was happening.
And our memories are fickle. Some things could be
misremembered or
embellished
after the fact and after all the hype of it.
Yes. So that's possible too.
I could see that.
We'll never know. But this is the book I also skimmed because I read the other book first and it had a lot of the same things. So many skeptics believe that this first book is kind of a little bit of historical fiction. But the very first words in the book, in the introduction, stated, quote, "It is not the purpose of the writer to present a romance for the entertainment of lovers of fiction, nor to establish a theory to please the fancy of adherents to so-called theosophy, but simply to record events of historical fact, sustained by a powerful array of incontrovertible evidence, as it came to hand, testifying to the most wonderful phenomenon the world has any account of, a visitation known as the Bell Witch, believed at the time by many to have been of supernatural origin, which appeared some 75 years ago. The author only assumes to compile the data, formally presenting the history of this greatest of all mysteries, just as the matter is furnished to hand, written by Williams Bell, a member of the family, some 56 years ago, together with other corroborative testimony by men and women of irreproachable character and unquestionable veracity."
Well, okay.
He claims, no, this is definitely not historical fiction, but a lot of his doubters say it is. So keep that in mind as well. I just wanted to set the stage a little bit.
Yeah, keep an open mind, not just show up and be like, these are facts. So
yeah,
I appreciate that. And I think a lot of the people listening appreciate that too. That we're not just like, ooh, it's all real.
Yeah, that's what I try to go into. The second book was called Bell Witch, The Truth Exposed. This book was written by Camille Moffat, a friend of the current owners of part of the original Bell property, including the Bell Witch Cave. Their names are Chris and Walter Kirby. It was published in 2003 and contains quotes from not only the previous book I mentioned, but also a book written several years later than the first one by a great-grandson of John Bell. The Truth Exposed details the events that happened years prior, as well as the most recent updates and revelations about the so-called Bell Witch, or at least up until the early 2000s. Both books were interesting, so if you want to know more, I definitely recommend looking into those books, and even that third book, the one by Charles Bell. I will give you what I can today.
All right, let's hear it.
So the legend begins about a 40-minute drive from Nashville in a town called Adams, deep in Robertson County near the Red River. Today, the Bell Witch Cave is a historic landmark that offers tours from summer through October 31st to the public.
I'm already intrigued. I want to go.
Maybe.
I don't know. Tell me more first.
The Bell home no longer stands where it once did, but the land still exists as farmland, distributed and partly owned by the Bell estate and partly owned by the Kirby family today. The land, like most of America, was occupied by Native Americans early on. In 1804, John Bell, Lucy Bell, and a few of their young children moved to Tennessee to build a new home and farm for their family. By 1817, when the ghostly events began, the family consisted of Father John, Mother Lucy, and 9 children: John Jr., Jesse Drury, also called Drew, Benjamin, Esther, Zadok, Elizabeth, also called Betsy, Richard Williams, some refer to him as just as Williams, and Joel. Only 8 of the children still lived at the home at the time. Their oldest daughter, Esther, had recently gotten married and moved out to live with her new husband.
Wow, a lot of kids.
The Bells were pretty well off, owning 320 acres of land for farming, and like most well-off families at the time, owned their fair share of slaves. Things were business as usual until the summer of 1817, when strange sightings on their property kicked off a series of events that would cement the property as a paranormal hotspot. John Bell was out walking the land when he spotted what he thought was a large dog or wolf in between the corn rows. When he looked closer, it seemed to him that the animal indeed looked like a wolf, but its head was that of a rabbit. He picked up his gun and took a shot at the creature, thinking maybe it was just some strange animal that lives in this part of the world that he'd never seen before.
The chupacabra. Is that only in Texas? Texas and Mexico?
I don't know.
Anyways.
It's on our list.
Is it?
It is. So anyway, he picked up his gun to shoot the creature, but it escaped unharmed, never to be seen again. Soon after, their son Drew walked out of their home and noticed a large bird perched on the fence. It was huge, and he thought it was just like this super big turkey. So he ran back inside to get his gun, thinking like, ooh, dinner, you know? Like, I'm going to provide for our family. But by the time he got back outside, it was flying away. And he also never saw it again.
Okay, so is this like a creature?
No.
This is taking a turn I wasn't expecting. I was waiting for...
this is just the start. The start of it is all of these strange sightings of weird, possibly mythical creatures out on their land.
Okay, I'm following.
Next, their youngest daughter, Betsy, claimed to have seen a young girl in a green dress swinging from the limb of an oak tree out on their property. She first noticed the pretty dress and was like, wow, look at this beautiful green dress, walked up to it and noticed it was actually attached to a little girl. So she called out, like, are you okay? And got no answer. So she ran back home to get someone help to like get her down and see if they could help her. By the time they got back, she was gone.
Oh, that's eerie.
And the animals weren't only seen by the family as well. It was often seen by Dean, who was an enslaved person who lived and worked at the Bell Farm. He worked really close, like in the house with the family.
Yeah.
And he would often claim to see a large black dog while walking to his wife's home at night. Maybe. There was, I didn't put this story in, but he had claimed to heard the dog speak to him. And it would like threaten him, and he tried to kill it several times, and it was like a whole ordeal. So if you're interested, you can go look that up.
Oh my God.
It was like so strange.
That's so scary. Okay.
Not long after the animals were first spotted, the family began to hear strange sounds throughout their home at night. The sounds of slight knocking on the windows and walls at first, but that escalated to sounds of scratching and gnawing on their beds and the floors. Many times the young Bell boys would awaken to these sounds and jump out of their bed, light the room, only to find that the noise had ceased and there was nothing there to be making that noise in the first place. They were sure that they had heard a mouse or something. They thought maybe we had a mouse problem.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like little tiny animals scratching and chewing on their bedposts. But after several nights of searching their rooms up and down, they couldn't find any traces of an animal and not even a small hole that an animal could get in and out of their room. It was as if the sound would make its way from room to room. As one child jumped out of bed to find the source of the noise, it would stop, and then the sound would continue in the next set of rooms.
I don't know if that's creepier, it sounding like a small mouse or creature, or if it sounds like a big person. Because why is it small like that? Is it like
I feel like small noises because small energy.
Peter Pettigrew. Roman the Bell
Yes.
House.
Scabbers is there. The scratching turned into gnawing turned into the sounds of strangling and choking, and that eventually led to sounds of soft whispering through the home. Quote, "Then we heard a loud gulping sound." This was from William's diary, supposed diary. "Like someone choking or strangling. Some new performance was added nearly every night, with all the former ones continuing, and it troubled Betsy more than anyone else. Occasionally, the sound was like traced chains dragging and chairs falling over."
A choking sound?
Like a gurgling, choking, like it was trying to talk.
You didn't have to say that.
Okay, sorry.
That was way too much.
The family would claim to hear the sounds of wings flapping on their ceilings, along with those sounds of chains being dragged across the floor from room to room, and sometimes even what sounded like animal noises. The sounds weren't all that was disturbing every member of the Bell family. They eventually began to experience movement on their beds and their covers being ripped from their bodies at night while they slept. The youngest daughter, Betsy, experienced the worst of it. The poltergeist would visit her room most often, eventually pulling hair, scratching at her body, and even slapping her over and over until her face was red and welted with handprints.
Jesus.
Actual red handprints on her face. Betsy would feel the sensation of pins pricking her body and was dragged around her room and abused by unseen hands more often than not.
My thing is like after the first instance, we're all sleeping in one bed.
Of being touched or the
Yeah.
first instance of gnawing? Because at that point you're just like,
Okay, no, the gnawing I could get past and think there's a mouse, there's a raccoon, there's a possum, there's something, a small little creature. But physically being touched, my blankets being ripped off.
Makes me think of The Conjuring when they all start
Yes.
sleeping down in the living room.
Yeah, we would all be in one bed like sardines. We would take every bed, push it
Like
together.
Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. where
Yes.
all the grandparents
Yes. I'll never understand how people
go on.
Yeah, or I guess it's like you don't want to give it power, maybe, or you want to just be
You
like,
don't wanna-
it's not real. You
Yeah.
don't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, we're
Immediately.
yes.
Well, John Bell Sr. was also beginning to feel the effects of their ghostly tormentor. He was said to experience strange sensations inside of his mouth, like a large stick was placed between his two cheeks, causing trouble for him when he spoke, ate, or tried to swallow. It was like this giant stick basically would hold his mouth
Open?
agape. Yeah.
Okay.
The family was terrified of their nightly visits, but mostly kept it to themselves, instructed by their mother Lucy not to share the strange happenings with any of their friends or neighbors.
Oh,
One,
yeah.
They were like a strong farming family. They didn't want to, seem weak or seem crazy to their neighbors that something was causing them this much trouble.
You don't want to become that family.
Yes.
That where all the parents are like, stay away from the Bell kids. Like, they're weird.
Yeah. And,
So I
and they
could
were
see that.
very well off too. So they were kind
Oh.
of like,
They had status.
yes.
I could see that. Okay.
They were like,
that makes sense.
just keep it to yourself. We'll deal with this in-house at first. Eventually, the family was in fear for their safety, particularly for Betsy. So they did reach out to a friend and neighbor, James Johnston, for help. Johnston and his wife made the decision to come to their home that night to assist in any way that they could. The family believed that having someone new in the home would stop the madness, but they would soon find the exact opposite. Johnston and the whole Bell family retired for the evening in their beds, but he was soon awakened by the same noise and movements that the family had been enduring for nearly a year at this point. The next morning, he told the family that it was indeed occurring and said it was, quote, a spirit just like in the Bible. Word of the Bell family's haunting soon spread through their town and far beyond. As the family continued to suffer through the same terrifying events, people from all over began flocking to the Bell family farm to catch a glimpse of the Bell Witch. It was like, we can help you.
And now
And
it's
then
like,
it's like, well, let us see for ourselves,
oh gosh, I don't like that. And that's where I feel like things can get taken to that next level of the story being embellished a little bit because it's getting so many
Too
people. Yes.
The real terror began when a ghostly voice began to call out to the family from thin air. It started soft, as if in low broken whispers and whistles. So it was like really trying to, but it couldn't get full words out. It was eventually capable of calling out to them from all corners of the house, as if it grew power from the fear and anguish the family felt at their helpless situation, as well as all of the people coming in and out of their home to see what's
Yeah.
going on. Began as a strange female voice that none of the family or visitors could place. They had no clue. They're like, this is nobody that we know. It couldn't be. It said that over a dozen people were in the home to witness the first night it began to actually speak. Frightened, they asked what the spirit or witch wanted and why it was there. Its answer was simply, quote, I am the spirit of a person who was once very happy, but have been disturbed and made unhappy. I am the spirit of a person who is buried in the woods nearby, and the grave has been disturbed, my bones disinterred and scattered. I've come to kill John Bell.
Why?
I don't know. There are theories that we'll talk about at the end, but no one knew. No one understood.
I don't trust John anymore.
No one outside the family anyway. I think it was said that the spirit spoke of why often, and maybe this is one of the things left out of the book in from Williams's diary.
Yeah.
So the family is said to have known why, but it's not public knowledge, supposedly.
Well, I mean, one, he was a slave owner.
True enough.
So that's enough. But
He was also said to have killed a man in North Carolina where they lived previously, though it was found to be self-defense and like Like he got off of it.
Okay.
So he had some skeletons in his closet for sure.
I'm thinking something darker.
It is. Well, one of the theories is very much darker, but we'll save that for the end.
I mean, you can't go much darker than owning slaves and murder, but I don't know. I just feel like
true.
I just
Or
feel
at
like
least it's on the same level, yeah.
it's something spiritually, like, I don't know. Oh, I'm ready to see. Okay.
The spirit would speak to them often, calling out each member of the family by name. The Bell family would cry out, hold on to each other, and scream out prayers in fear of the disembodied voice, and it would just simply laugh, a sinister laugh.
Oh, I hate that. Okay.
Betsy, who was only 12 years old at the time the hauntings began, would have seizures and felt as though she were being smothered and unable to move on her own or speak sometimes. She would have her breathing cut off until she became unconscious, the spirit silent as it focused on its vicious attacks on the young girl for no reason, or seemingly no reason. Nothing and nobody could calm the spirit, and it was as if the more people would come into the home to check it out for themselves, the more speaking and throwing of items would ramp up. It's like it would put on a show.
Yeah.
It would gain energy and like, you want to see, I'll show you.
Which is weird because I feel like a lot of the time it's like when you go to get your car fixed, it's like, my car's been making a weird noise, I swear. And then you take it to someone and it doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like sometimes spirits they are so crazy. And then the second someone walks in, it's like,
Not for you.
no, we're not here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's scary.
People would crowd into the family's home, and if they couldn't fit inside, they would pitch tents out in the front yard and watch as strange lights would appear across the lawn, and sometimes stones and chunks of wood would seemingly fall from the sky with no known cause or origin. In the 1934 book written by Charles Bailey Bell, the great-grandson of John Bell Sr., he interviewed Betsy, then an elderly woman, and she relayed the torture she had gone through at the hands of this faceless ghost. So he interviewed her before, and then the book was published in 1934.
Okay.
And she was very elderly.
Okay.
Quote, when the spirit became so tantalizing, filling my mind with horror and causing me to become so nervous, my parents often sent me to a neighbor's house to rest for a night. My first night away from home was spent with Thenie Thorne, one of my best girlfriends. Nothing was heard until after we retired, which we did early. We locked the door to our room securely. Just as soon as we had retired, there came a loud knock on the outside of her door, which seemed to fly open, and a great gust of wind was felt. Then our bed quilts were snatched off. Thenie sprang up at once and lit a candle. To our surprise, the door was not open. We adjusted the bedclothes and laid down again. Then a voice spoke very softly, saying, Betsy, you should not have come over here. You know I can follow you anywhere. Now get a good night's sleep.
No.
A soft hand patted my cheek, and the voice again assured us that we would not be disturbed anymore that night. We both were very much excited or frightened, but we laid quite still, and after so long a time, fell asleep. The next day, Thenie went home with me, and my mother related that the spirit had told her all about our experience, and for her not to be alarmed, that we would rest well and be home the next day. So it came to her while she was staying the night at her friend's house, trying to get a good night's rest, which she hadn't gotten in months.
So this thing's not attached to the house.
It is.
It's with the entire family.
Yes.
That's weird, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
You would think
it's all weird.
If it's, well, yes, but you would think that if it's attached to one of the people in the home, like John or whoever, but it's attached to everyone?
My guess is land first. It grew in strength and attached itself to the family. But we'll see, it's not just the family either. We'll see, it goes far beyond this.
Oh, God.
What gets me is that the mom knew. When they got home, the mom was like, our ghost told us that it was going to see you at your friend's house, basically.
Kind of cool.
I guess. It seemed that the spirit had grown in strength and was able to visit locations outside of the Bell home. Quote, it could sing any song in the hymn book and quote any passage of scripture in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. If anyone misquoted a verse, they would be promptly corrected.
So it's not a demon?
Maybe.
Because demons, can't they, like, they don't say?
I think they can.
But I thought they didn't like when people said Bible verses. They're like, and freak out.
I don't know
I mean, that's like from
all
a movie.
Of it, yeah.
But
I think they can probably quote the Bible, but I'm not sure.
Any demonologists out there? Let us know.
On one occasion, the family had two reverends visiting them after church one Sunday. They both preached their own sermons that morning at two different churches, more than 13 miles apart from each other. Shockingly, the entity began to recite the first preacher's sermon, word for word, and mimicking the voice of the preacher who had given the sermon earlier that day. So it relayed the same sermon, word for word, out loud to him.
With his voice.
With his voice.
I would have to go into hiding. I would quit everything.
Well, they were all super shocked because they had never done anything like this before. And they asked how it was able to do it. And the spirit just said, I was there. But then it began to recite word for word in the exact same voice of the second preacher's sermon from earlier that day as well. It claimed that it was also there to see and memorize the other church sermon, even though it happened at the exact same time, miles away. It was said that the witch could even interrupt church sermons inside the building from time to time as well.
What's going on?
This is also, a bigger part of the lore and legend. So take that with what you will.
Okay.
So as I said, the spirit was very cruel to John Bell Sr., often causing him great harm, as it did with Betsy, as well as cursing at him and threatening him from time to time. Often, not even from time to time. It was like, more often than not, it was like threatening him in his life. It claimed it did all of this because he deserved it. Luckily for Lucy Bell, the spirit thought very highly of her. It even called her the, quote, most perfect woman living. It never caused harm to the mother of the family, and when she fell extremely ill at one point, it would often speak to her in soft, kind tones and get her anything that she needed. Like, if she needed help, she would call a family member to help Lucy. And this is really weird. There were claims that it would drop grapes and nuts that she wanted from the ceiling. From nowhere. Like, she'd be lying in bed and say like, oh, like, I want grapes. Could you go get me some grapes? And the spirit would just drop grapes onto her bed. And so they would look at the ceiling and like they went upstairs to look. No one was in the room. They would look for holes, and seemingly there were no holes that any food could even escape through.
Okay, you're losing me.
It's weird. It's all really weird.
Okay.
So as I said, the Bell family had hundreds of visitors over the 4 or so years that they were plagued by the spirit or spirits. It's unclear. One being an English scientist, an admitted skeptic who came from over the ocean to see the phenomenon for himself. He stayed for quite some time and witnessed multiple incidents and attacks on the family, though he stayed quiet. He didn't want to voice his opinions.
Yeah.
It was claimed that the witch was able to read his mind and repeat his thoughts out loud to the family and other visitors of the Bell family.
That is a huge fear of mine. I'm not even kidding. There have been times where I'm in a room full of people and I will.
Yeah, me too.
And I'll look around and I'll be like, if anybody can hear my thoughts right now, look over at me. And I'm like looking around because sometimes I'll think something. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't even like think that. What if someone heard me? I have a real fear that someone can read minds. Yes.
It vowed to perform to him and began to tell him of some of the things that had been going on with his own family back in England. It said to him like, oh, your mother's this, your father's doing this, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, okay, sure. Well, soon after, letters arrived from his family detailing the exact same things that the spirit had told him was happening with his family back in England. And he's in Tennessee.
How is it all knowing? I just don't understand.
Maybe like connection to the spirit realm and can talk to its spirit buddies.
I guess.
I don't know.
I guess.
I don't know.
This is weird.
The man was astonished, and the spirit offered to relay a message to his family. It alleged that the man said, quote, tell them that, in my opinion, never since the world has created have men seen and heard the marvelous things that I have witnessed during the past 3 months that he had been at the Bell home. And just 3 hours later, the disembodied voice spoke out again in the room, this time in the voice of his mother, his own mother's voice, saying, quote, tell him not to stay any longer. He has heard and seen enough, and we do not want any more visits like this here. There are some who claim that before he became the 7th president of the United States, Andrew Jackson made a visit to the Bell family farm to see the Bell Witch for himself too. Let's keep a running tally. Should we post up a little board and like check off all the presidents that have connection to ghost stories?
I don't want to talk about presidents
How
anymore.
many is this?
I don't want to talk. I've had enough.
Okay. Yeah, I also have.
No
Agreed.
more.
Now, as with everything else in the story, none of this is proven or totally verified, but it's an intriguing piece of the lore. And the story changes depending on the source as well. It said that Jackson knew the Bell family because he fought in the Battle of New Orleans with John Jr. a few years prior. He was so intrigued when he heard the name associated with something so strange and unexplainable. He and a small group of men made the trek from his home, which was about 100 miles away, to Adams, Tennessee to investigate. In his group was a supposed witch slayer who brought a large gun and silver bullet to get rid of the witch once and for all. He wasn't the only person who came to the farm believing he could solve the problem for the Bell family, as there were plenty of people who visited believing they could help them. But just like each of those who came before him, he was unsuccessful. It said that before they even arrived at the family farm, he was devising a plan with the other men on the trip of handling the supernatural tricks that the witch was known to play on visitors. So it's like, if he rips my blanket off, I'm going to do this. You know, that kind of thing. As they approached the family home, their wagon came to a sudden halt. No one stopped it. They were traveling on a smooth dirt path with nothing in sight to have stopped them, so they were all confused as they got out and inspected each and every wagon wheel to search for a problem. They thought maybe there was a nail or a rock or a chip or something. Nothing. They removed each wheel to inspect them, and nothing. No matter how hard they tried to get the wagon going again, nothing would help. It was as if the wagon was a permanent fixture to the earth. After several minutes of pushing and pulling and doing everything conceivably possible to get the wagon to continue on the journey, Andrew Jackson threw up his hands and said, quote, by the eternal boys, it is the witch. Suddenly, a strange voice that seemed to come from the bushes surrounding them replied, all right, General, I'll let the wagon move. I will see you again tonight.
No, you won't.
Well, all of the men leapt toward the bushes to find the owner of the strange voice, thinking it was somebody there to frighten them.
Yeah.
Not a soul in sight. It was at that moment that the wagon began to move once again, easily, as if nothing had ever happened.
That's enough proof for me, though. Like,
Would
if
you
I
just
was
turn around and like, all right, we saw you.
Yep.
The men eventually made it to the farm, all a little spooked, but mostly ready to get revenge on the specter. Their afternoon was uneventful. But by nightfall, the self-proclaimed witch hunter began to say aloud that he was the reason the witch did not show itself. It was simply fearful of him.
Sure.
It's claimed that Jackson grew tired of his bragging and whispered to the man sitting next to him, I'll bet he's an arrant coward. I do wish the thing would come. I want to see him run. As soon as he finished with the last word, sounds erupted from the floorboards all around them. The same voice from earlier that day shouted, All right, General, I'm here and ready for business. It began to challenge the witch slayer, telling him to shoot if he dared. He took aim, but the gun would not fire.
Took aim at what?
Where he heard the voice come from, I guess.
Okay.
Again and again he tried, but the gun would not work. The witch taunted the man, and then suddenly the man was hit with such force over his head that he fell back out of his seat and onto the ground. He then swiftly and without another word raced from the room and out of the house.
Nice.
Jackson is said to have fallen to his knees with laughter as he watched the arrogant man run down and away from the home. Jackson was later quoted as saying, quote, I had rather face the entire British army than spend another night with the Bell Witch.
Oh, wow.
During her years of torment by the evil spirit in their home, Betsy found solace in her friendships and eventually courtship with a neighbor named Joshua Gardner. He knew how the so-called witch afflicted her and stood by her side through it all. That is, until it began to chant and plead with Betsy to end their relationship. It's claimed that the spirit would follow her around chanting, Please, Betsy, please, don't marry Joshua Gardner, over and over again. It would proclaim to her that she would have a miserable life if she did so, and would threaten her, telling her constantly that she would not marry him.
Honestly, I would have to say, like, okay, I would have to believe it.
Well, eventually the fear overcame her feelings for young Joshua, and she ended their engagement in order to save him and herself of a lifetime of misery. She eventually married her teacher after she graduated, who disturbingly had showed interest in her for many years.
Oh, no.
So some people say that it was maybe him following her around saying, please don't marry Joshua.
I didn't like the way this...
It's icky.
Yeah,
It's
gross.
Yeah. It's really gross.
Okay. Ew.
The year was now 1820, and the family had gone through years with this haunting, all but ruining their lives. John Bell Sr., or Old Jack as the witch liked to call him, was having a harder and harder, really, dealing with all of the things that the spirit brought upon him. She despised him worst of all and would physically and mentally attack him, just as she did with Betsy. Come December of 1820, and John seemed to have been attacked for the final time. He was rushed home after a walk through his hog pen and suffered convulsions. When he made it home, he was bedridden for days, his health steadily on the decline. He had been seen by their local doctor and given medicines in hopes that he would recover, but things were not looking good for old Jack. The witch was beside herself with glee at his downfall.
Oh.
Would laugh and kind of revel in it. On the morning of December 19th, John seemed to be toward the end of his life. His son, John Jr., raced to his medicine cabinet to retrieve something that may ease his pain, but instead found a bottle of dark liquid that he had never seen before. All of his medicines were gone, and all that was left was this vial. He called his family to come see what he had discovered, questioning each of them on whether they knew what the vial could contain and where his other medications could be. Nobody could answer the question, so they called for their local doctor to come and see their father. He was the only one who was known to bring medicines into the house, and they were hoping for some answers as to what this could be and how they could further help their father through his illness. The doctor had no clue what the vial contained, but could smell the same scent on John Sr.'s breath as he checked on him. It was at that time that same familiar voice entered the room gloating, quote, It's useless for you to try to revive old Jack. I've got him this time. He will never get up from that bed again. I put that vial there and I gave old Jack a big dose of it last night while he was asleep. I fixed him. The family was shocked, and the doctor could only think of one way to test to see if the vial did in fact contain poison as the spirit had implied. Warning, skip over the next 30 seconds. Animal cruelty.
Oh, God. What? Can I skip?
If you want me to, I will.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Say it.
He opened the bottle and gave a few drops to the family cat that was sitting in the room with them. The cat died almost instantly.
Death to all of them.
They were like, well, let's test it with the cat.
Death to everyone involved.
Very sad. John Jr. was enraged and threw the bottle of poison into the fireplace and watched as it exploded into a cloud of purple smoke, and his father passed away not long after. The witch, however, was not done with the family. She seemed to rejoice in his passing, as if she had finally succeeded in what she had come to accomplish. Towards the end of his funeral, they all heard from her as she broke out into song, singing, Row me up some brandy, oh, for on a journey I will go, and continued singing until everyone had left. It wasn't long after this that the spirit began to show itself less and less, until eventually disappearing altogether, though it did vow to return in 7 years' time. For years following the experience with the Bell family, people spoke of the Bell Witch and the supernatural phenomenon on that farm. It was written about in papers and letters, and as I said, it was eventually fully put to paper in an 1894 book by a newspaper editor and journalist. The Bell Witch, A Mysterious Spirit, was written in 1934 by Dr. Charles Bell, where he recounted the stories passed down in his family, and in this writing, the Bell Witch Cave was mentioned for the first time. Betsy recalled that while playing in the cave near their home one afternoon, one young boy who lived nearby was actually seemingly saved by the spirit of their land. Quote, "On the river near the north boundary of the farm is a cave in the bluff, which is about 300 feet high. There is sufficient room at the front of the cave for people to have lunches. Below the cave, the river makes a good fishing place, and we often fish there. The cave became famous as the Bell Witch Cave. None of us ever knew of the cave being occupied by the spirit, but on our pleasure trips, we always heard its voice on the river or in the cave. We often took candles and went back quite a way to a big room some 30 feet high with a kind of upstairs to it. After passing through this, the passage became small. One time when we were exploring the cave, one of the boys in the crowd came to a place where he had to get down on his knees and crawl. He got into a kind of quicksand deposit and soon became so jammed in he could not get out. His candle was out and no one could get to him. Suddenly, the big room and all parts of the cave were lit up, as if by a big lamp. A voice called out, 'I'll get you out.' The boy's legs were then seized as if by strong hands, and he was drawn out with a face full of mud that had nearly suffocated him. We all agreed not to tell our parents anything about this nearly fatal accident, but that night when the spirit arrived at the usual neighborhood gatherings at our home, it asked the boy's parents if they had gotten the mud out of his ears. Then it told him about his predicament earlier that day and advised them to put a halter on him so his companions could pull him out if he gets stuck again."
Oh, wow. So good, bad, neutral. How are we feeling right now about the witch?
At this point, I thought there's got to be more than one spirit.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Charles Bell also claimed that when the spirit returned to the family home in 1828, that it rattled off several predictions to the family that were kept secret until the publishing of the 1935 book. This included that she would return again more than 100 years later. It's not completely known if she did as she promised, but there were several reports of strange activity in 1937 by people in the area. There was supposedly an unexplained noise that was heard within the cave by the current owners of that section of the farm, as well as several people seeing a figure of a woman sitting on top of the cliff over the cave while out one night around a campfire. There had been rumors of strange sightings and occurrences in and around the cave for many years following, and subsequent owners continued to allow visitors to see the strange events for themselves, just as the Bell family allowed in their home all those years ago. When the current owners, Chris and Walter Kirby, moved onto the land in 1993 and into the home built just 28 years prior by the previous owners, they didn't fully believe all the hype and intrigue that surrounded the land and cave. They were soon proven very wrong, though.
Oh, okay. 93. Okay.
The Kirbys had been hoping and praying for a way for them to live out their dream of running their own tobacco farm for a while before they found the old Bell land. They would put in offer after offer, which always seemed to fall through for one reason or another. That is, until Walter found a good deal when the Edens were selling the land that contained the Bell Witch Cave. They too were having trouble selling the land, so when Walter came across it for such a great price, he felt he couldn't pass up the opportunity. They were getting much more land than they had anticipated because it was such a good price, and they're like, this is just an absolute dream. Or Walter thought that. So he went to his wife and let her know that he put in an offer, and they both really didn't care much about the story that came along with the land. Oddly enough, just weeks before Walter put in his bid for the Bell land, Chris had seen a psychic, and she had told her that they would get their farm, but the land would have a highly supernatural energy inside of a structure there. The psychic wasn't sure what the structure was exactly, but she knew that it was not a part of a house and that it was a permanent structure on the land.
The cave.
Looking back, Chris and Walter think that if they truly believed in the supernatural events that were claimed to have occurred there for centuries, they probably wouldn't have bought it.
Really?
Though they weren't 100% bought in on the hauntings, they were ecstatic to finally have the land of their dreams and much more than they had originally thought they could afford. The couple and their 12-year-old daughter, Candy, moved into the old Bell farmland and began their new lives that year.
Love that name. Candy. So cute.
When I hear Candy, I think of the Mandy Moore song Candy.
That and Candy Johnson.
They were given plenty of information on the hauntings from the Edens before they officially moved in, but Chris set all of that aside to put their focus on getting settled. She was like, okay, got it, sure, and just set it away. But on the first night that the family stayed in their new home, the paranormal was already making its presence known. It was middle of the night when all three of them were startled awake to the sounds of loud crashing coming from the kitchen. All three. Husband, wife, daughter. They assumed it was a glass that had fallen from the counter or something, so they all stumbled out of their rooms and made their way blindly down the hall into the kitchen, searching for a light switch along the way because they weren't
It's a new
used
house.
to their new house. Yeah. When they finally made it to the kitchen, nothing was amiss. No glass was on the floor and nothing was out of place from where they had left it before heading to bed. Yet all three of them heard the noise. It woke them up from their sleep. After checking all of their boxes to see if the broken glass may still be packed away, thinking maybe something fell inside of a box.
Yeah.
The next day, nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing.
Still
Just
nothing.
the sound.
Yes. So Chris decided that she was going to have a look in the little journal that the Edens had left her after all. She found pages and pages of strange little experiences that the family and those before them had encountered while living on the land. The Edens had also heard the sounds of shattering glass, often in the middle of the night. There was an entire page dedicated to it in the journal. Just like the families before them, the Kirbys would hear the sounds of people walking through their home when nobody was in other rooms. To Chris, she believed the entities to be intelligent because it was as if they were responding to their voices. They would hear noises, call out, it would stop as if like stopping to listen to them.
Yeah.
And when they didn't say anything back, it would go on and continue on.
That's creepy. I don't like that.
There was even an instance where Chris heard loud banging coming from the basement of their home. They would often hear footsteps and banging down in the basement. She was so spooked that she called a friend hoping that it was all in her head. Like, maybe I'm hearing things. Unfortunately for her, the friend also heard it and was like, what's going on at your house?
It's always the basement.
It
always.
is. They would hear the same scratching, banging footsteps and whispered voices coming from other rooms in the home as well. One of the most frightening stories from inside their home came one night when Walter Kirby awoke from a dead sleep. He heard the whisper of his father's voice right in his ear. It was as if the voice was so close he could feel the warm breath on his face.
Ew.
He sat straight up in bed, readying himself to walk through the home to find his father, when it came to him that his father had just passed 3 days before.
See, okay, that I wouldn't attribute that to the haunting of.
He chalked it up to being just a very vivid dream. But that's when he heard the voice again, exactly like his father's voice, this time louder from the dark hall outside of his room, calling his name and beckoning him to follow it.
Nope, that is disgusting. I hate it.
His father's voice.
Oh, that's
He's recently
sick.
departed.
That is sick. See, I was going to say I could handle that, as he's asleep or whatever, because maybe it's his dad. Maybe it actually is. But calling him out into the hallway?
Like, come on, Walter, come follow me. Soon after moving in, Chris found that it wasn't just the house on the property that had an exorbitant amount of activity. She went out to the cave knowing that she would soon need to prepare it so that she could resume the tours that had been offered for decades before she moved in. The families before had always offered tours of the cave. They set up whole tours and they had like stories written out to tell them about all the hauntings that were endured there. And she was like, you know what? I'll continue that too.
Okay.
I'll keep it up.
I'm happy, but that's strange that it's coming from the family, like the owners. I thought it was like the town of, whatever.
Yeah. No, it's the family, whoever owns the property.
That's cute.
She was really eager to have a responsibility because she knew her husband would be super busy on the farm, like getting a farm going and getting everything done. So she's like, well, at least I'll have something to do, something to keep me occupied.
That's cute.
So she began experiencing the same encounters inside the cave as those before her, and she spent lots of time making sense of her encounters with what was written down in the journal. She and her daughter could hear the sounds of movement coming from deeper within the cave when nobody was inside. During the winter, it's closed because the river will rush through the cave and it's dangerous for people to go in, so they just don't go. And so they were getting ready to open back up, and they were raking out all of the stones and pebbles that were brought in by the river, and they stopped. Or the mom left and the daughter was still in there, and she stopped just to take a little breather. And then from deeper in the cave, she heard raking sounds. And so she was like, nope, and took off running out of the cave and told her mom. And mom's like, no, it's probably just echoes. Like, it's fine. It's nothing. And Candy was like, absolutely not. So they went back in and they could hear it still.
Why is it
they heard movements all the time?
Mimicky. I don't like that.
Me neither. So she began the tours and witnessed paranormal encounter after paranormal encounter. It just became a normal part of her life at this point. It seemed to be more often than not, a group would come in, have something inexplicable occur, then while inside the cave. Just like years prior, people would experience a sensation of hands slapping them across the face, sometimes so hard it would knock them to the ground. And when they would emerge back to the entrance gate, they would have red fingerprints to prove that they had visibly been touched. Tourists would see large masses of white smoky haze move across the ceiling of the cave with no known source. Cameras would often stop working or malfunction completely while taking the tour. Chris will tell people, don't bring your expensive cameras here because I can't guarantee you'll have it when you leave.
Oh, wow.
Very often, it would just completely stop. One time, everybody's flashes came on at the same time for no reason. Another time, a man's camera, which was hanging around his neck, he was just hands in his pockets, walking around, just started taking picture after picture with flash. And he was like, my camera is off and the flash is off.
I don't know why my hand just went numb.
People will often hear heaving, raspy breathing from deep within the cave, as well as the sounds of footsteps, and even those heavy chains still scraping the ground. So they'll hear chains inside the cave too.
Is it the ghost of an enslaved person?
It's possible.
Or a prisoner?
When I think chains, I think of demons.
You do?
Usually, yeah. That's my first thought. But I mean, again, we are novices. We don't know anything.
I think prisoner or person that is being held against their will. That's what I think.
Animals will often steer clear of the cave as if repelled by it. So they had like a couple farm cats that just would not go in. Most ominously, Chris and Walter both have heard the sounds of distinct voices while inside the cave, often sounding exactly like their spouse. So both of them will be in the cave and their spouse will be elsewhere, and they'll hear them talking to them. When they come out, the person's like far away. Like Walter will be far off working on some equipment, or Chris will be in the parking lot fixing something up for the nightly tours.
What is it? Because it's mimicking, it's ghostly, it's
a lot of things. Chris had spoken with psychics about the presences within their home and particularly inside the cave, one claiming that there are many spirits in and around the structure. The cave, she said, is, quote, most likely a portal, a point at which spirits cross over from the world to the next. Many souls may linger here for a short time or much longer.
I was gonna say a portal.
Yeah, and some believe that the portal within the cave is where these hauntings all began. Like the source of all the negativity experienced by the Bell family and those who lived after are coming from this portal within the cave.
Oh, okay, so it could be multiple.
Yes.
Okay.
This is crazy. So not long after the Kirbys moved in, paranormal investigators began flooding them with requests to conduct investigations of the cave. Eventually, they allowed a man named Bob Schott to come in. He was apparently some like really renowned investigator who used a lot of high-tech gear. He brought with him state-of-the-art tools for the time, like temperature monitors, night vision equipment, electromagnetic field fluctuation detectors, and something called multi-energy sensory array, or MESA, that could detect any type of change in a range of energy fields. His team found loads of instances where the temperature would dramatically shift and got off the chart readings with almost all of their equipment. Kirby's asked that the team also set up a camera overnight that would face a dark hole in the crook of the second corridor that leads into the back room. They're like, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen there, because that's where we always hear things going on. So the team did as they were asked and set up a camera with a special night vision lens and a, quote, special infrared filter, which is reportedly 5 times more sensitive than those used by the U.S. military at the time.
Who's this man? And what clearance does he have?
What they captured was unbelievable. I don't have it.
Oh my God. Okay, so I don't believe you.
But it was reported in the book by the Kirbys and the author about it. So
let us see the pictures.
It was reported that the team captured within a fraction of a second what looked like some type of doorway very suddenly appearing on screen, sliding open just long enough for 2 human-like figures to slip out. Like it looked like an actual portal was opening and allowing access from some other world or dimension into our own, and then it shut completely and vanished from the screen. It was like within a fraction of a second it all happened.
Okay.
Supposedly, Bob Schott had several experts sent it off to several experts to analyze the footage to 2 different, quote, major independent corporations that specialized in infrared and electro-optics and provided advanced defense technology for the U.S. military. So these were like contractors who worked with the military with some of this infrared technology. Neither corporation knew what could possibly be on the footage, both completely stumped. I have 2 quotes from both of these companies. The first one coming from B.E. Myers of Electro-Optics said, "I have no explanation for the vortex or doorway depicted on the film. It is truly an unexplainable phenomenon." The next one coming from Alan Harding of Lytton Electro-Optics. "With regard to the translucent sliding doorway, I have no explanation for this phenomenon." So all these people had no clue. They'd never seen anything like it. They're like,
I have a weird out there thought. What if there are other dimensions? And now this is getting way out there for me. What if there are other dimensions and the other people or beings can come in undetected and like see us and interact with us and do all these little hauntings?
Yeah.
But it's just people that like bought a ticket to do it.
Like $20 to go and haunt this family.
Come and see the humans. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll pay. And they walk in and they're like, ooh. And they're like, ha ha ha. And they run off.
Special voice change boxes like scream.
Yeah. What if that's what that portal is?
That would be kind of hilarious.
Just a weird thought that I had.
So you can still visit the cave today, though you must sign a waiver and be 18 or older or accompanied by an adult to gain access.
I want to do it.
Possibly because you are entering into a cave and there are plenty of dangerous things associated with that. Like you could fall and hurt yourself or get hit by a stalactite or I don't know, things that happen in caves.
It's like big enough where everyone can walk, right? There's no
there are like rooms.
Okay.
Only one group can come in at a time, and there are some points where you have to like walk single file into places.
No.
But yeah, you don't have to go in the back if you don't want to.
Okay, yeah, but I want to go to it.
I don't.
Really?
Yeah.
I do.
I don't.
I'm not scared.
It seems a little too scary for me.
Nothing too scary happened in this one.
A man died.
Okay, but he did something.
He had to. One thing you should never do if you do visit, so if you decide to travel to Tennessee and visit this cave, do not disrespect or announce your disbelief of the spirits. Do
Oh.
not taunt the spirits in the cave, or else you too could be forcefully pushed to the ground, slapped in the face, or worse.
I would never.
It's also recommended that you do not take anything from the cave with you, not even a single pebble, because the spirits can follow you out and you may have to suffer the consequences. There was one story where a woman asked if she could take a rock, and Chris was like, sure, if you want to. And she left the cave, and before she even got back to her car, she was racing back to the cave to put the rock back, blood rushing down her body because she had been shoved to the ground so forcefully.
Okay, see, I wouldn't go in there with any type of disrespect, any type of disbelief. I would walk in and go,
Yoo-hoo.
nice, and I would walk out. That's it. I just want to see. I want to see if it feels different.
Yeah. There are several people who have gone to the cave, like Zach Bagans, like Sam Colby, of course. Like, you can go on YouTube if you want to actually see the cave.
Yeah.
So who was the Bell Witch? Nobody will ever truly know. Their poltergeist activity was originally thought by the Bell family and those nearby to be the workings of a witch that had put some kind of curse upon the family, or was, I don't know if they called it this back then, but like astral projecting and causing harm to the family, though that's never been proven, obviously. Some believe that it was a woman named Kate Batts. She was a distant neighbor of the Bell family, and by some sources, actually a relative of Lucy Bell. And she had had some trouble with John years prior that had never been resolved. So they were beefing.
Okay.
So they're like, it must be
Enough
Kate.
for her to want him dead.
Yeah. There are some sources that claim that the witch told them that its name was, quote, Old Kate's Bat's Witch,
Okay.
as if it were a part of her projected to cause mayhem in the family. It answered to the name Kate, but also would refute the claims that it was Kate Batts at times. So it just was a liar.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, you can't trust it.
It was also believed by some that the land was in fact an, let's say it together, ancient Native American burial ground.
That's,
Typical.
yeah.
Said that in the book, the 2003 book, Bell Witch, The Truth Exposed, which was really fun, easy and fun read if you're interested. The remains were actually found on the property by the Kirby family that were determined to be around 2,000 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, supposedly the Kirbys did find remains that were from some ancient burial, as well as prior people who'd lived on the land.
But that's not shocking.
No,
That's not new.
you're gonna find it.
That's not
a lot of
new.
places.
Yeah.
It's believed that the mound builders used the land around the cave to bury their dead, and possibly the inside of the cave to perform ceremonies. That's what's supposed.
Interesting.
The author of this book, the same book, said that she found information on these ancient Native American shamans who would likely perform their ceremonies near the burial of their dead in an attempt to open a passageway between worlds so that they could communicate with their deceased loved ones. So were these ancient Native shamans performing ceremonies that actually did open a portal?
I mean, I believe probably, but
I believe it's possible. Well, it's also believed that the hauntings all began when Drew Bell accidentally uncovered one of these graves and brought back a jawbone with him to show his father. So he and a friend were out just digging around, hoping to find some kind of relics or ancient treasures.
Yeah.
And found a jawbone. And he was like, wow, I gotta go show my dad. Went back and the dad was like, excuse me, take that back. What are you doing disturbing someone's grave?
Yeah.
But by then it was too late.
I could see that.
Of course, there are skeptics to this whole story. I mean,
always
I'm
are.
skeptical to a lot of the portions of this story.
Yeah.
I believe that the base happened. I don't necessarily believe that all of it happened.
Same.
Like, I don't believe that it was dropping grapes on Mother Lucy's bed when she was sick.
Absolutely
That
not.
just
I don't either.
is kind of a little far out there.
Yes.
Many believe that the entity of the supposed source material was completely fabricated. They think that Ingram made it all up just to sell books off the popular legend in the area. So the legend was there, and he just was like, actually, I found Williams's diary, Then there are others who think Betsy was the source of all the supposed hauntings. They think it was actually she who cast her voice like a ventriloquist to frighten her family and continued on with the convulsions and made up the slapping to get attention from not only her family, but also the boy she had a crush on, Joshua Gardner.
Oh.
Some believe that, and there are some versions of the story that said that the witch was saying, like, you must marry Joshua Gardner at first.
Yeah.
And then when she got older and they got engaged, it was like, actually, no, you must not marry him.
Uh-huh.
So maybe. And maybe it was just all a popular legend made bigger by conflations of a few other stories about a young girl who was supposedly attacked by an unseen spirit and turned into what it is today.
Yeah.
So maybe it's all just blown way out of proportion. That it
bunch
wasn't,
of-
there weren't hundreds of people crowding onto their lawn and attempts to see this spirit.
Yeah.
Trigger for the next section essay. So
Oh, God.
there are some who believe that Betsy was actually being molested by her father, and the supposed hauntings all stemmed from this abuse. Betsy was 12, the supposed age when her mother Lucy and John, who was 32 at the time, had actually gotten married. So John, 32, married Lucy at 12, supposedly. And so when Betsy turned 12, it was kind of like he was just this sick freak who like 12-year-olds. Sorry, really gross and very uncomfortable.
Oh, well, if that's true, he got what he deserved.
Yes. The hauntings continued until Betsy was 16 and her father died from a supposed poisoning. So maybe it wasn't a ghost killing him after all. It was just the revenge of a young girl who was tired of her abuse. Maybe the neurological problems that seemed to be plaguing John Sr., so all the like strange feelings he had in his mouth and the weird convulsions that he was having was actually caused by a slow death by poisoning over time.
Okay.
That's what some people posit.
Yeah.
I also read one article that said from the accounts of his death and all the things that had happened and the image of the poison and stuff, they think it could have been arsenic. Though there's no way to prove that now.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to reiterate, all of this is unsubstantiated. None of this is proven at all. It's all theory. And the Kirbys don't believe that it's true either. The people who live there now, they don't think that actually happened. They truly believe that there's just many, many spirits that haunt the ground where the Bell family farm once stood.
But why?
I don't know. I mean, he was a bad guy. He murdered somebody. He owned slaves. He was just all around.
He was bad.
Yes.
Agreed. I think we can all agree on that.
They believe that there may have been one main and powerful spirit, but the amount of activity experienced by the family and visitors alike for years would be consistent with the land containing a portal that allowed swaths of spirits to drift in and out of the area.
Yeah.
So some people have, including like psychics, have seen like a little boy in overalls and a young woman and like all kinds of spirits. So people think that maybe it was just not one spirit. Maybe there was one powerful evil spirit.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of them coming in and out and causing a bunch of crazy things to happen on the land.
That makes, I can't believe I'm saying that makes more sense, but it makes more sense for there to have been multiple, for like all of the different things happening.
Yes, I agree.
I could see that.
When I was first reading this, I was like, is there a portal of some kind? Is there just like
the cave,
some kind of cemetery on the land that's causing all these weird hauntings?
I think so.
Well, lastly, I want to get into some of the predictions. So as I said before, the Bell Witch did return in 1828 to the original Bell family. At that point, several of them have moved out and moved on with their lives. And the family claimed that she had made many predictions, most of which had come true so far. She supposedly predicted the Civil War, World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, and the U.S. becoming a superpower. So all of these were supposedly predicted by the Bell Witch in 1828 and written about in the book published in 1935.
Really?
She implored them to heed the lessons of history and warned that leaders of the U.S. would face great tests and trials equal to those once faced by the Roman Empire. She claimed that if they were not properly handled, the country would become inundated with greed, meanness, and oppression of the poor. Whether the U.S. made it out would depend on the actions of the people. Quote, will its people accept love, light, compassion, and tolerance for their fellow man? It asked. Or will they adhere to greed, hate, and oppression? One thing it did predict...
Well...
I'll just leave that there. One thing it did predict that has not come true yet is that the earth would be completely destroyed by fire. Now, humanity will have to wait to see if the so-called Bell Witch is correct about that one.
I have nothing else to say after that. I don't know.
Bell Witch. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Good.
You think
the
so
same
too?
way, yeah. I totally believe that something's going on there.
I don't think it's a witch.
No, I don't think it's a witch. I think it's ghostly activity.
I'm actually kind of disappointed though, because
you thought it was witchy.
I thought we were going to be talking about witches and things like of that nature. I think this was a good one.
I had a lot of fun reading about this. I mean, I read 2 books about it. Like it was that interesting to me.
But yeah,
and there's plenty more out there. So if you want more, there's more. You just have to go looking for it.
We need to just do a tour of
all the places we've talked about.
Yes, I would love to, but I would go to the cave. You would go to the cave?
I don't think so.
You wouldn't just want to like see, but you would go to the Moonville Tunnel?
Yes.
You psycho. Yeah.
I don't even like trains, and I think I'd rather go to the tunnel.
I wouldn't go to the tunnel. That one freaks me out. I don't know why, but I would go to the cave.
I love how different our reactions are to these.
I'm shocked.
It shocks me all the time.
I guess the cave is like, it's nature. It's,
Yeah, no, I get it. I see the appeal.
Yeah.
Just after reading all that I did, I don't know. It just freaks me out a little. I don't want the opportunity to be physically attacked by a spooky spirit.
As long as it doesn't follow me home, I'm fine. I can handle a slap. I can handle a push. I'll be scared.
Who are you?
I'll be scared. No. I'll probably pee my pants.
Okay.
Literally. As long as it doesn't follow me home and I can just leave and be like, oh, that was scary. Remember that time.
Yeah.
That's fine. But
it would take some convincing. You could probably convince me to go. But as of right now, no. I'll pass.
Okay. Has
I'll
anybody...
stay in Nashville while you drive the 40 minutes over.
It's only 40 minutes?
It's only 40 minutes from Nashville, yeah.
Let's go.
Anybody ever been to the Bell Witch Cave? Let us know. If you've ever heard of the story, if there's anything that I left out that you really enjoyed about the story, you can share it down below in the comments as well.
I know we have a handful of people from Tennessee that listen. So
yeah.
someone has to have experienced something or know something.
Or know someone who has experienced something.
Yeah. So let us know.
You can also like this video and subscribe if you want to see more from us. If you're on podcast, please leave a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that. And if you have a story of your own and you don't want to share it in the comments, you can send it to our email. That's the best way to get into contact with us.
Yes.
It's ghosteaspod@gmail.com. That's GHOSTEASPOD@gmail.com. I would love to hear your stories. Once we get into December, we're going to start doing our double episodes again, getting back to our listener stories, our bread and butter.
I'm so excited. I'm ready. All right. Anyways, happy Monday. Have a good week.
Bye.
Goodbye.